Kill them, quickly.
What? No! You creaking old bag of shit!
I'm so sorry, my lord. She's an unbeliever outside my control.
Try again. Dispose of the rest as you see fit. Or better yet, let us take advantage of our surprising guest and their particular creative genius. I'm sure the results will send a clear message to the troops on the importance of discipline.
Of course, my lord. Thank you.
It's impossible to overstate the importance of Dungeons & Dragons to the gaming world. It has served as inspiration for countless RPGs, movies, video games, and it's seen major resurgence as of late, thanks to the likes of Stranger Things and, oddly enough, COVID. It's been just over 20 years since the last installment in the Baldur's Gate series, and impossibly, that has ended. Brought to life by RPG masters Larian Studios after a lengthy 3-year stint in early access, we're happy to once again return to the Forgotten Realms. Welcome to our review of Baldur's Gate 3. I'm Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for GamingTrend.com. Let's roll.
Thank you for helping me. It was very kind.
If you've not played Baldur's Gate or Baldur's Gate 2, Shadow of Amn, rest assured it's not necessary to enjoy this third installment. For a short refresher on the second title, a man named John Irenicus, and easily one of the best antagonists in CRPG history, drives the player to hell and back, rather literally, to foil his grand bid to gain immortality. The titular city serves as a backdrop for intrigue, political infighting, and even a fight with a literal god. Heroes like Jaheira, Imoen, Aerie, Minsk, and his pet hamster Boo, Cerned, Corrigan, Mazzy, and more come together to save the world. While not a direct sequel, Baldur's Gate 3 takes place roughly 100 years after the events of Shadow of Amn, directly following the events of the descent into Avernus. Once again, the city of Baldur's Gate is under attack, this time by the mysterious and malevolent mind-controlling Illithid. Dubbed Mind Flayers, these monsters have kidnapped the residents of Baldur's Gate. You're one of those residents, and unfortunately for you, the situation only gets worse from here. With the mind-controlling tadpole burrowing into your brain, your primary mission is to get it out, but that's going to prove to be more of a challenge than you might expect. Our review will attempt to be somewhat spoiler-free, though some functions and moments will require a bit more discussion to set the tone or conditions to talk about them effectively. As such, we'll be mindful of spoilers whenever possible, and I'll be very clear before I read them out. With that said, let's build a character.
Who are you?
You've got a wealth of options to choose from to create your own custom character. Frankly, you'll be spoiled for choice with 12 major classes and 46 subclasses. These can be attached to the 11 races and 28 subraces. Asmodeus Tiefling? Check. Lightfoot Halfling? Yep. Black Dragonborn? Exciting. Better still, you'll find this to not only be a cosmetic choice, but one that will have direct and immediate reactions from the literal thousands of characters you'll encounter. To say that the character creator is robust is like saying Arizona's kinda warm in the summer. First and foremost, as you can see, Baldur's Gate 3 has one of the most impressive and inclusive character creation systems in any game, regardless of genre. Frankly, it puts Chinese and Korean MMOs to shame. Brace yourself for numbers. Here we go. There are 4 body types from slim to absolutely yoked for most races, male, female, or other non-binary or other for identity, nearly a dozen voice options for every race, 8 facial presets, and 60 or so skin colors with the option to unlock all 145 of them if you want to go off-brand for your chosen race. There are 10 scar options, a slider for maturity from young to old, freckle density, freckle intensity, vitiligo pigmentation, and more than a few genital options. 44 facial tattoos, 15 piercings, 32 eye colors, again with the option to unlock the full list of 145 of them, including heterochromia, and 17 eye makeup styles, 77 lip tints with sliders for intensity, metallic tint, and glossiness, 87 hairstyles, 125 hair colors, with highlights and graying options for accents, and 19 facial hairstyles round out that massive list. Moving on to backgrounds, there's 11 of them: acolyte, charlatan, criminal, entertainer, folk hero, guild artisan, noble, outlander, sage, soldier, and urchin. These give your characters a bit of flavor for their upbringing, but also give skills in things like insight, religion, athletics, survival, acrobatics, performance, and more. These come up frequently in all sorts of ways that you can't predict, but this is a choice that you'll want to roleplay, as there's simply no way to game the system. If you want to tinker with your initial stats, you're welcome to do so, but your character is somewhat pre-allocated to start. Based on your class, it'll automatically try to assign the stats that will serve you best. You're welcome to change these as you wish, including your selected proficiencies. If you ever wanted to create a super smart barbarian with a focus on arcana and stealth, well, Baldur's Gate 3 isn't here to stop you. For a more guided experience, you can also play as one of the origin characters. These allow you to select one of your party members as the main character rather than creating one yourself. You'll control them through their adventure, with their personal quest becoming part of the main quest. One of these origins is not like the others, however. The Dark Urge allows you to create a custom character and then choose their class, but unlike Tav, comes with a dark, unknown backstory. This isn't for the faint of heart, as you'll need to fight your inner demons to avoid committing horrible atrocities, or encourage these urges if that's your thing.
I'm going to say something I'm confident we're all thinking. What's this you're doing?
One of the biggest changes in the move to a next-gen engine is that the team can push in on faces for conversations, and boy do they, frequently. As every character in the game, including animals, hello speak with animals spell, is voiced, the Larian team moves the camera in to take advantage of the fantastic visual fidelity present in all of the characters. I'll use a brief but hilarious interaction with a young tiefling in town as an example. Walking up with my wizard, the little guy offered to sell me a magical ring that gives me a boost to my luck. He demonstrates this with a coin toss that happens to land on whatever selection I've made. Suspicious to be sure. My rogue, having this same conversation, immediately noticed the grift. I could roll against my dexterity stat and manipulate the ring to make it disappear, signaling the little hustler that I was onto his game. All this is done at a closeness we've never seen in a Baldur's Gate game, evoking games like Dragon Age Inquisition instead. It makes you care about these interactions more, and it makes them far more satisfying. The performance capture on each character is also very well done, and combined with the excellent visual fidelity, breathes life into even the most otherwise insignificant characters in the game. It's staggering the sheer magnitude of options available to you in Baldur's Gate for nearly every interaction. Racial traits, class, previous interactions with associates, upbringing, where you once lived, stats, religious preference, knowledge of history, medical training, if you happen to have picked up a book, sheer dumb luck, and much more can be used to tilt the odds in your favor, and that doesn't even count forcing the lever with the parasite hitchhiker that's in your head. Dice rolls rule the day, so you'll still need to nail the numbers to make it all come together, but it makes every single interaction emulate the tabletop game in the very best way. You'll feel the dice rolls, you'll celebrate the critical hits, you'll flinch at the critical failures, and you'll wince at those skinnier teeth rolls where you make it, but only just, thanks to some combination of equipment, stat bonuses, and other advantages. It creates tension in a way we've never seen in a CRPG before, other than the ones that Larian's made in the past anyway. The Sword Coast is absolutely gorgeous as well. Partnering up with NVIDIA, Baldur's Gate 3 ships with full DLSS 3 and DLAA support. On a GeForce RTX 40 series card, there's an uptick of roughly 93% increase in frame rate. A quick test on GeForce RTX 4060 Ti gave me a reliable 4K resolution with an average frame rate hovering around 70 frames per second. Pretty quick for an entry-level card. That said, Chapter 3 isn't well refined, even now. Frame rate can be highly inconsistent, swinging from 60 to 30 on that same 4060 Ti. Cards with far more VRAM fare better, but there's still some swing. Popping down to a 2080 Super on a laptop, I was getting roughly 60 frames per second at 1080p, and between 65 and 77% GPU utilization. This game is very well optimized, at least in the early days. Framerate cap and lock, model quality, detail distance, instance distance, say that 10 times fast, texture quality, texture filtering, animation level of detail, dynamic crowd density, shadow quality, cloud quality, fog quality, anti-aliasing, ambient occlusion, depth of field, options and quality, God rays, bloom, and subsurface scattering are all possible tweaks to get precisely the frame rate you want, so tweak it as you see fit. If your preference runs to the AMD side, it's a little lighter on options. AMD FSR 1.0 and Fidelity FX sharpening can help with those cards. If you plan on playing on Steam Deck, well, you might find it looks and runs a bit worse than early access. Further optimizations have come out via patches, and fans have figured out exactly what settings to use, but at launch, it was a little blurry and very aliased. That said, there are plenty of guides out there to help with image quality and also getting the Steam Deck running 30 to 40 frames per second, at least until you get to the third area. That's going to require additional work by Larian. I'm very happy to see that Baldur's Gate 3 continues the Larian tradition of offering cross-platform play, cloud saves, LAN support, direct connection, as well as a standard Steam option for multiplayer connectivity. With up to 4 players able to join in the fun, it's surprisingly just how frictionless the multiplayer functionality really is. Better still, if one of your party isn't available to venture forth, the folks remaining can take control of that party member and direct them until the human player is able to once again join the party. Even for a crash, the second player can rejoin the host seamlessly. Additional options continue to be added post-launch, including the ability to effectively swap out characters via, Chronicles of Narnia wardrobe that sits in your camp. You'll figure it out when you get there. If you're the kind of person who likes to share their experiences with an audience, you'll be happy to know that there's a Twitch extension built directly into the game. Enabling it will allow your audiences to vote on your interactions and choices. While they can't directly impact those outcomes, they can certainly weigh in and share in the experience. A cool option for those who enjoy that sort of thing. Your audience won't be able to affect combat, aside from chat roasting you over your strategies, but those familiar with D&D will just need a little bit of time to get to grips with some of the adjustments made to the rule set. There are some liberties taken with the Dungeons & Dragons 5e rules, but thankfully they're battle tested and tilted to ensuring the player is having fun. As such, bonus actions like shove, drinking a potion, or scroll usage that would otherwise be bound to a specific character class can be used by all characters. Similarly, meta magic options are tweaked and balanced to function within the game. There are plenty more that I could detail out, but thankfully I've not run into any that feel like a cheat rather than a simple tilt in the player's favor. When you eventually end up in combat, and there's plenty of opportunities for that, you'll need to understand the delicate balance of the action system. Every character has a number of direct actions for things like attacking, casting spells, chugging potions, and similar things. They can also move a certain distance based on their attributes and traits, executing those actions anywhere inside that movement. In addition, there's a bonus action and reaction system. Bonus actions can be things like unleashing a key-fueled empty hand attack as a monk, or cantrips. Reactions are exactly what the name suggests, an optional reaction to an incoming stimulus. For example, a warlock can react with a Hellish Rebuke spell when struck, unleashing 1d10 of fire damage on the attacker, an often fatal reaction. While actions regenerate between rounds, many bonus actions and reactions do not. A short rest, an hour of in-game time, is needed to regenerate these, as well as spells and other abilities. We'll talk about short and long rests in a moment, so hold that thought. One of the best parts of Baldur's Gate 3 is the way that combat unfolds. If you sneak up on a foe, you'll be able to perform sneak attacks. If you're above them, you'll receive a bonus to your ranged attacks. If you use your staff to knock a foe prone, you'll have an incredible advantage on an all but incapacitated foe. If you want to accomplish this same task with Tasha's hideous laughter, well, then you too can enjoy the hilarious results as your enemy laughs themselves stupid for 10 rounds. Using your character's strength to lob an explosive barrel down from a rafter, influencing an enemy to attack their friends, catching an incoming arrow and flinging it back to the sender, charging up your companion's infernal engine and turning her loose to burn her foes to ash, and there's always the fun of lobbing a fireball into a narrow corridor, only to watch your enemies, crates, plates, forks, bedrolls, and more catch fire, flying everywhere, setting little fires wherever they land. Doesn't matter what class, subclass, race, or background you pick, there's a wealth of opportunities to engage with the combat of Baldur's Gate 3, and each one leans into the best parts of the game. Somehow Larian has given us all the best parts of the pen and paper dice roller while removing all of the mundane. One aspect I've enjoyed far more than I have any right to is shoving people. My character is a monk and I have insanely high athletics. I use those insanely high athletics to jump impossibly high, then I shove people off, laughing the entire time. I had a particularly troublesome boss that I just couldn't take down despite my best efforts. He made the stupid decision to stand near a chasm. Sure, I lost his equipment, but we'll always have the memory of his yelps as he careened down the craggy rock face. Every fight is a chance to engage the world in a fresh way, but it's also a chance to hip-check folks off of impossibly high cliffs. Life is happiness, and shove makes me insanely happy. You know, it's difficult to shove someone if you're not close to them, and movement is paramount here. Each character gets a set amount of movement each turn based on their movement speed, and you can dash to double it, using your action in the process. Jumping is a handy way to move just a little bit further as well, and it only uses your bonus action for that turn. Melee characters will want to be as close as possible, but ranged characters want the exact opposite. To maximize your hit chance, you'll want to surround enemies with your melee characters, optimally knocking them to the ground for advantage, and place casters and archers on high ledges so their rolls get advantages as well. Eventually you're going to get tired. You've used all your spells, exhausted all of your ki, shoved all the things, and your characters just need a break. It's time for a long rest. Long rests are not only a chance to recover all of your skills, health, and abilities and the like, but it's a chance to interact with and get to know the various members of your party. Learning how they tick, what fears they harbor, and their deeper stories can be the key to unlocking additional traits, knowledge, and even romantic options. This longer rest requires camp supplies, so you'll want to make sure that you bring provisions with you at all times, lest your otherwise restful rack time be somewhat less so. Something to be aware of, however, is that time does continue forward, and that can mean problems. Not saving people from being imperiled can mean that they can end up dead, and yes, that includes main characters. Hiking up to a building on fire and then immediately taking a nap, well, that's sure to have consequences for the poor souls inside.
Well, hello. What can I do for you?
Your party in Baldur's Gate 3 is, put simply, delightful. You'll begin as a ragtag group of unlikely and often unwilling allies, but by the end of the game it felt like any one of them would gladly lay down their life for the other. It's a slow progression, and it feels natural as well as incredibly satisfying to earn each individual's trust. Likewise, romance takes a different path in most games. You may have the hots for someone, but pursuing them romantically doesn't end with a simple sex scene. In fact, several companions have this scene right up front. Instead, your relationship grows and changes over the course of the game, hopefully for the better. David, on the other hand, went a completely different route. He chose to have his character spread the love around, so to speak, to control her dark urge. She became romantically involved with Shadowheart, Lizelle, Will, Halsin, a demon, and even a Mind Flayer. Unfortunately, most characters in the game want to keep their relationships monogamous, the only polyamorous character being Halsin, so you can only romance very specific combinations of characters. I'm a bit disappointed I couldn't turn the entire party into one big polycule, but it's not a very involved system either. Speaking of the dark urge, quests. Baldur's Gate 3 has a massive amount of them, and quite possibly even more player freedom in which to complete them. The Druid's Grove from Act 1 in Early Access is a great example. You can save the grove by allowing a ritual to complete, closing it off from the outside world. Or defeat the goblins that are threatening the grove. Or cut the head off the snake and only kill the goblin leaders. Or say screw it and assault the grove with the goblins. Almost any solution you can think of to a problem is completely valid, and more often than not, acknowledged by the game in dialogue. Need to stage a prison break? You can pickpocket the guard for keys, pick the lock yourself, take out the guards one by one lethally or non-lethally, or even destroy the back walls for a tunnel out in some cases. Want to painstakingly drag explosive barrels into the rafters and then tip them onto the heads of the unwitting enemies below? Have a blast. This truly feels like a tabletop Dungeons & Dragons game. You'll only have to tell the DM what you're doing, and you can, more than likely, do it. The stories these quests come with are also impeccably well written. Characters are complex and human, and stories have unexpected twists and turns that still feel appropriate. The main quest is certainly a highlight, but side quests can feel equally important, often connecting to a party member's personal quest in some interesting way. Of course, the game doesn't take itself seriously all the time. D&D is less Game of Thrones and more Monty Python, after all. And there are certainly some very funny moments strewn throughout. For example, in a random clothing shop, you can find an NPC fantasizing about what class he'll choose to adventure as, and he's comically terrible at everything he tries. Things only escalate as you progress, too, with pivotal character moments paced nicely throughout. As amazing as the game is, it's also quite glitchy as a whole, and more so the further you get into the game. Animation oddities, quests not progressing properly, softlocks where conversations or combat won't end properly, and even one where save syncing gets stuck so you can't save or load are just some of the hiccups. It's frustrating to see, and I'm sure some of this is caused by bumping the release date up to avoid a certain other big RPG, so hopefully the developers aren't crunching to get things fixed. The game is still very playable, and it's still better than the state of most AAA games at launch, including the one that they moved their release date to avoid. Given Larian's track record and a patch that's already squashed over 1,000 bugs, I think we can give them a little bit of slack here.
From the look of things, you've got your wits about you. A clever mind and a bit of style will take you a long way.
Baldur's Gate 3 is absolutely magnificent. There's simply nothing like it anywhere. Not even the likes of Fallout, Skyrim, or any other massive RPG can compete with what's on offer here. Even superpowered Choices Matters title like Witcher 3 Wild Hunt don't offer the interactivity and flexibility of this title. While there may be a few last-minute things to tighten up post-launch, none of that stops me from declaring that Baldur's Gate 3 is a once-in-a-decade experience. They simply don't make them like this, and I can't wait to experience all that this game has to offer, and that's likely going to take half a dozen playthroughs and possibly far more. We give Baldur's Gate 3 a 100%, stating that Baldur's Gate 3 is an impossibly good RPG, made with a great deal of passion and skill. While there are some last-minute issues to iron out, Larian Studios has delivered an adventure far beyond our wildest imaginations. I'm Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for GamingTrend.com, and I want to say a special thank you for David Flynn for helping me get this review done. I sincerely appreciate you. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you again very soon.